What happens when a laid-back soul singer gets pushed to his absolute breaking point on live television? You're about to find out, because Teddy Swims just had one of the most explosive moments in talk show history, and it all went down on the Clarkson show. Before we get into what really happened, make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling me what you think about this whole situation, because trust me, you're going to have opinions. It all started with Teddy Swims walking onto the set, smiling, ready to talk about his music, his journey. The usual stuff that happens on these shows. Kelly greeted him with her signature warmth, and everything seemed perfectly normal. They started chatting about his latest album, the tour, and how his life has changed since his music blew up. Teddy was being his authentic self, cracking jokes, talking about his struggles before fame, and opening up in a way that made it feel like a genuine conversation between two people. Then Kelly shifted gears. She brought up his past, specifically some videos from years ago before he became famous. Teddy has always been open about his journey, working regular jobs, struggling to make ends meet, doing whatever it took to survive while chasing his dream. But Kelly started digging into some specific moments, showing old social media posts and videos where he was trying to get noticed, doing covers, being over the top, doing whatever it took to break through. Teddy laughed it off at first, saying, "Yeah, I was doing whatever I could to get people's attention. I was hungry. I was desperate to be heard, and I'm not ashamed of that." Kelly nodded, but then she kept pushing. She pulled up one particular video on the screen behind them, and Teddy's expression changed. The energy in the room shifted. Kelly asked why he was acting a certain way back then, why he seemed so different, and Teddy took a deep breath. He said, "I was different because I hadn't found myself yet. I was trying to be what I thought people wanted me to be. I was performing even when the cameras weren't rolling because didn't know who I was allowed to be." Kelly responded, sounding supportive at first, but Teddy wasn't letting it go. "I've evolved because I finally feel safe enough to be myself. I've evolved because I'm not starving anymore. I'm not worried about rent. I'm not panicking about whether anyone cares about my voice. That version of me was desperate. This version of me is free." There's a difference. Kelly tried to move on, asking about his songwriting process, but the vibe was off. Teddy's answers were shorter, less animated. Kelly noticed and said, "I don't want you to think I was attacking you earlier. I just think it's important to acknowledge all versions of ourselves." Teddy looked straight at her and said, "I do acknowledge all versions of myself, every single one. But what I don't appreciate is someone implying that I'm not authentic now just because I was struggling then." The audience fell silent. Kelly tried to explain herself, saying that wasn't her intention, that she just wanted an honest conversation. Teddy cut her off. "An honest conversation? You want honesty? Let's be honest. Then you brought me here to talk about my music, my album, and the message I'm trying to share with people who feel like they don't belong, but instead, you're showing old videos of me when I was broken, when I was trying anything to survive and questioning whether I'm real. Do you know how that feels?" Kelly looked taken aback. Teddy said celebrating my journey would mean talking about where I am now, not dissecting who I was when I had nothing. Kelly apologized, saying she meant no harm. Teddy nodded, but he was still emotional, saying people love a struggle story until the person actually makes it out of the struggle. Then suddenly, it's like, let's make sure you remember where you came from. Let's make sure you're still humble. Let's make sure you haven't gotten too big for your boots, and it's exhausting. Kelly tried to relate, but Teddy wasn't done. He said, "Do you though? Because you've been famous since you were young. You won a competition and became a household name overnight. I know you worked hard, but you didn't spend a decade being invisible. You didn't spend years wondering if anyone would ever care. So when you sit here, question my authenticity because I'm not the same desperate kid I was 5 years ago, it hits." Teddy pauses and says different. The audience was completely silent. Kelly looked uncomfortable, but was listening and said, "You're right. Our journeys have been different, and I can't fully understand what you went through, but I brought those videos up. Because I thought they showed your resilience, your determination. I didn't mean for it to feel like an attack. Teddy leaned back, running a hand over his face, and said, I hear you, but impact matters more than intention. You might have meant it one way, but the way it landed was completely different. That's what people don't get about these conversations when you've been through real struggle. When you've been looked down on, told you're not enough over and over again, you become sensitive to anything that feels like that same energy, even when it's wrapped in a pretty package. Kelly nodded, now visibly reflective, and said, I never thought about it that way. I can see how that would bring up a lot of feelings. Teddy softened slightly and said, Look, I'm not trying to make this a big thing or make you the villain, but I think we need to talk about how we treat artists, especially artists who came from nothing. Teddy takes a deep breath and says there's this weird thing where people want you to stay grateful to the point of being small, like yes, be thankful, but don't get too confident, yes, celebrate your success, but don't forget you were nothing before this, and it's toxic. Kelly asks him to explain more about what he means, and Teddy says, people love an underdog until the underdog actually wins. Then it's like, well, let's make sure they don't get too comfortable. Let's remind them they could lose it all. Let's poke at their insecurities and call it keeping them grounded, but what it really does is keep people in a constant state of anxiety, never fully able to enjoy what they've worked for, because they're always waiting for someone to tell them they don't deserve it. Kelly sits with that for a moment and says, that's really powerful. I think you're speaking to something a lot of people experience, not just in the entertainment industry. Teddy nods and says, absolutely, this isn't just about music or fame. It's about how we treat anyone who rises above their circumstances. There's always someone ready to question if they've earned it, if they're still the same person, or if they've changed for the worse. Kelly then asks, so how do you deal with that? How do you stay true to yourself when there's so much pressure and so many voices telling you who you should be? Teddy pauses and says, honestly, it's a daily practice. Some days I'm better at it than others. But what helps is remembering why I started making music in the first place. It wasn't for fame. It wasn't for validation. It was because singing was the only time I felt like I could breathe. The only time I felt like myself. So when things get overwhelming, when people start projecting their stuff onto me, I go back to that feeling. I remind myself that the music is mine. The message is mine, and nobody can take that away from me unless I let them. Kelly responds with a different tone now and says, I think I needed to hear that too, because even though my journey was different, I still deal with people questioning my choices, my authenticity, whether I'm still real, and maybe I projected some of that onto you without realizing it. Teddy's expression softens, and he says we're all dealing with our own stuff. I get that, but that's exactly why we need to be more careful with each other. We need to ask ourselves, is this question I'm about to ask coming from genuine curiosity or from my own insecurity? Is this conversation going to build someone up or tear them down? The audience starts to clap, not the polite applause you usually hear on talk shows, but real heavy applause, people responding to something authentic. Kelly waits for the applause to fade, then says, can I be really honest with you right now? Teddy nods and Kelly continues, I think part of why I approached this conversation the way I did is because I've been feeling disconnected from my own authenticity lately. I've been doing this for so long, and sometimes I wonder if I'm asking the right questions, if I'm still connecting with people the way I used to. Maybe I was trying to create a moment instead of having a real conversation, and that's on me. Teddy looks surprised by her vulnerability and says, I respect you for saying that. That takes courage. But here's what I'll tell you, the moments that matter aren't the ones you manufacture. They're the ones that happen when you stop performing and start being present. And I say that as someone who spent years performing even when I wasn't on stage. Kelly nods slowly and asks, so how do I get back to that? How Do I stop overthinking and just be Teddy leans forward, fully engaged, and says, "You stop worrying about what the moment is supposed to look like, and start paying attention to what's actually happening. You listen, really listen, not just to respond, but to understand. You let go of the script in your head and follow the flow of the conversation, and most importantly, you remember that the person sitting across from you is a human being with feelings, a story, fears, and dreams, not just content." For your show, Kelly takes that invisibly moved and says, "You're right, and I'm sorry that I made you feel like content instead of a person." Teddy nods. "I appreciate that. And look, I know this is your job. You have producers, writers, and a whole team trying to make good television, but good television doesn't have to come at the expense of someone's dignity. You can have compelling conversations without digging into people's wounds." Kelly agrees. "Absolutely. I want to do better." She pauses, then asks, "What do you wish I had asked you instead? What conversation do you want to have?" Teddy thinks for a moment. "I wish you had asked me about the moment I realized my voice mattered. I wish you had asked about the people who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. I wish you had asked what I want people to feel when they hear my music. Those are the conversations that matter to me, not whether I was cringy in some old video." Kelly smiles genuinely this time. "Okay. So tell me, what do you want people to feel when they hear your music?" Teddy's whole demeanor changes. His eyes light up. "I want them to feel seen. I want them to feel like someone out there understands their pain, their joy, their confusion, all of it. I want them to know it's okay to be messy. It's okay not to have it all figured out. I want my music to be a safe space where people can be exactly who they are without judgment." Kelly's voice carries real emotion now. "That's beautiful, and I think that's why people connect with you so deeply, because they can feel that intention in every note you sing." Teddy smiles. "That means a lot coming from you and I. No, we got off to a rocky start today, but I think this is the conversation we needed to have, not just for us, but for everyone watching. Who's ever felt like they had to defend their growth, their changes, their journey?" Kelly nods. "I think you're absolutely right, and I'm grateful that you called me out. Growth only happens when we're willing to be uncomfortable." Teddy nods back. "Exactly, and that goes both ways. I had to check myself too, because I came in defensive, ready to protect myself. That's not the energy I want to carry. I want to be open. I want to be generous, even when conversations get difficult." Kelly then asks, "Do you think there's ever a time when it's okay to look back at who we used to be? Or should we always just focus on moving forward?" Teddy considers this carefully. "I think looking back is necessary, but it has to be done with compassion. When I look at old videos of myself, I don't see someone to be embarrassed by. I see someone who was doing his best with what he had. I see someone who was brave." Teddy says, "That version of me deserves respect, not ridicule." Kelly replies, "That's such a healthy way to view it. I think a lot of us, myself included, look back and cringe at our old selves." Teddy responds, "And that's the problem. We've been conditioned to cringe at growth. We've been taught that who we were before is something to be ashamed of instead of something to be honored as part of our story. Every version of us got us to where we are now. Every mistake, every awkward moment, every failed attempt, it all mattered." The audience is completely locked in now. You can feel that this has transcended typical talk show conversation. Kelly says, "I needed this conversation today. I think a lot of people needed this conversation." Teddy smiles and says, "Good, because this is what I mean when I say I want my music and my presence to create space for real talk. We spend so much time being polite and surface level, and meanwhile, we're all struggling with the same things, feeling alone in our experiences when we're really not alone at all." Kelly then brings up something that seems to be weighing on her. She asks, "Can I ask you something that might be uncomfortable?" Teddy smiles. "After everything we just went through, I think we can handle uncomfortable." Kelly laughs, and the tension that was there at the beginning has completely dissolved. She says, "Do you ever worry that by being so open, by being so vulnerable, You're giving people ammunition to hurt you. Teddy doesn't hesitate. Every single day, he says, but I'd rather be hurt for being honest than praised for being fake. Because here's what I've learned: when you hide parts of yourself to protect yourself, you're not really protecting yourself. You're just building a prison. You're creating a version of yourself that's safe for other people, but slowly killing the real you. I did that for so long that when I finally started being authentic, it felt like I could breathe for the first time in my life. So yeah, it's scary. Yeah, people will use my vulnerability against me, but the alternative is suffocating, and I can't go back to that. Kelly wipes her eyes, clearly moved. She says, I think that's one of the most powerful things I've heard anyone say on this show, and I'm so sorry that my questions at the beginning of this interview made you feel like you had to defend that vulnerability. Teddy replies, you don't have to keep apologizing. We talked through it, we got to the other side of it, that's what matters. But I do hope that moving forward, you'll think about the impact your questions have, not just on me, but on every guest who sits in this chair. Kelly nods emphatically. I absolutely will, she says, and I want to thank you. Teddy thanked Kelly for not just shutting down or walking off because he felt she had every right to, but instead, she stayed and pushed through the discomfort and gave everyone something real to think about. And Teddy said he stayed because he believes in the power of difficult conversations, and he stayed because people are tired of surface-level interactions, and he stayed because maybe someone watching needed to see that it is okay to speak up when something feels wrong, even if it makes things awkward. And when Kelly asked what he wanted his legacy to be, not as an artist, but as a person, he paused and said he wanted people to remember him as someone who made them feel less alone, someone who showed up as himself, fully and completely, even when it was terrifying, someone who saw every broken and beautiful part of people and loved them anyway. And he said he hopes his legacy is not about records or awards, but about how he made people feel. And Kelly smiled and told him he was already doing that, and that this conversation showed it even more. And for the first time, Teddy gave a real, unguarded smile and said that, at the end of the day, everyone just wants to matter, and to know their existence made a difference. Even if for one person. And they both stood up and shared a genuine hug, and Kelly told the audience to sit with what happened, because this is what honesty looks like when we stop pretending and face the tension. And she thanked Teddy for his courage. And Teddy thanked the audience for witnessing the moment, saying he hoped it gave them permission to have their own hard conversations and speak their truth, even if their voice shakes. And Kelly added that growth is messy and change is uncomfortable, and that evolving as people and as a society requires sitting in that discomfort and calling each other out and in with love and respect. And Teddy agreed, saying the goal is never to tear each other down, but to build each other up, to challenge each other to be better, and to hold each other accountable while holding space for each other's humanity. And Kelly said it was the perfect way to end, and thanked him for being there and for the conversation. And Teddy thanked her for being willing to go there with him. And what began as a standard talk show interview turned into one of the most raw and real conversations seen on television in a long time. And Di did not show up just to promote his music. He showed up to remind everyone that authenticity matters. That authenticity matters, that difficult conversations create real connection. And if this resonated, viewers should subscribe and share whether they believe Kelly was wrong for bringing up Teddy's past, or whether it was a fair question, and share their thoughts.